So Bernie calls and I go down there expecting, a box, you know, like a box.
Sure.
And there's this huge
A
box,
crate.
two of them sitting underneath the desk, probably a year and a half's worth of music. And I take it in, and then he comes to me and he says, "So what's good?" And I said, "Well, here and here and here, and these are great pieces, and we need to publish." And so he turns to me, he says, "How would you like a series?" Well, what does that mean? Well, just put your name on it. Okay, we'll do that. And so I say, okay. And then he says, "Is there anything you'd like to publish?" And I said, "Well, there's this piece I have, but we still don't have rights to the piece." Now, so this is Cloudburst. We're talking 1993, 94 in that area.
And had Whitaker published anything yet?
Yes, the only thing I think he had published, maybe not, yeah, he published the not Rose Song, Flower Songs with Santa Barbara Music.
Okay.
So that's Go Lovely Rose
Yeah.
and those three, a set of three. But Barbara Harlow, who was a person there, would not publish something that was in Spanish and was that long, like Cloudburst or too many Divisi parts. Nobody did.
Right.
So in comes a piece that had been rejected by Dale Warland called Water Night. And Bernie asked me if I put it into my series. And I said yes. And he looks at the number of parts, he counts the number of voices, and he says, "I'll put it in Walton because he's a distributor for Walton."
Right.
And so I do all the editing, get done, and Bernie, says, "Okay, this is going to go in your series." And then Dale calls and says, "I hear that you're going to publish Water Night." And it had been the second place piece in the competition for the Dale Warland Singers for the
Okay.
choral competition. And Bernie says, "Well, yeah, Mike Scheibe's going to put it in a series." And Dale says, "Well, it should go in my series." And Bernie comes to me very, nonchalantly and says, "You can have it, but I think, how do you feel?" I said, "I don't care. I'm just here. It doesn't matter." Well, and of course it went to a company like Pepper at the time with their editor's choice and will it be
Yeah.
editor's choice? And it gets, no way would that be an editor's choice. It's in too many parts and it does this and, it's
Right.
just too hard. Nobody will ever buy it. And it sells 50,000 copies in its first year. So we finally get permission for Water Night and it's in my series. And so Eric and I start this period of time where I'm with Walton. One of the pieces is
If I
with
may for a second, when you were editing that, were you back and forth with Eric a lot on that? Or
Yeah, in fact, Eric and I, because my kids knew Eric, Eric knew my kids, and there's this connection. I mean, there was a connection there. He's doing great things, and I'm just amazed at what he does.
yeah.
And he was very nice to my kids, really wonderful to my kids. And that was important because my kids didn't see dad much, as most choral conductors will
Right.
all agree with.
Right.
So, Eric starts funneling all of his music to me, and I'm doing the editing. And then comes a piece called Leonardo and his flying machine, right? And, that is not going to sell as many copies as a Cloudburst or a Water Night or some of those pieces. And Eric sends me a tape in the mail. And he said, "I want you to listen to this." And it's Eric at piano, I think, Gila as a soprano, Gila Footman, and a friend on violin. And they're in Israel doing this. And I listened to it and wrote him back, I think, or we talked on the phone. I don't remember where he was at the time. And I said, "This would make a great choral piece."
Yeah.
And then about a year later, the dean says, "I've got You know, you've never asked for money from the Frost commissioning series. I have some money. Would you like to do it? And I said, "Yeah, I'd like to use it." Yeah. So I'd like to use the Bergonzi Quartet, which was a resident quartet at Miami, string quartet, and choir. And so I know exactly what I want to do. And I call Eric, and the dean funds Eric to write the piece, Five Hebrew Love Songs,
Amazing.
which are these sketches that have been on this tape.
So the
And
first choral setting then was the version with string quartet.
with string quartet,
Yeah.
but there was an optional version which was with just single violin and
Yeah, no, yeah, that's the version I've done. Yeah,
and that became because not everybody's going to have a string quartet.
right. So thank you
And
for that.
yeah, and we ended up taking that then to ACDA in 2003. We premiered it in the fall of 2002 in the Festival Miami concert
Mhm.
with the string quartet, but I couldn't afford to take the string quartet all the way to New
I
York
see.
and on tour. So we had a single violinist that was with us on that tour, and that closed the program at ACDA in New York.
Blew
And I
everyone's
still
minds.
remember Eric and Philo sitting in the room in Riverside Church when they were singing that, and you know, it ends with that violin, and I think I opened with the Lordson Ove Las on that program, and we also did Penderecki's Agnus Dei, which was one of the pieces by a person who I consider also one of my mentors, which was Weston Noble, because we would always share new music. He would talk to me, "Do you know this piece?" And so it was just kind of Joe Michael. It was always that, you know, with Weston. That again talks about the world we're in.
Yeah,
You know, if I hadn't have been at NAU, I wouldn't have gotten to know Renee Clausen
right.
because the voice teacher I hired had been the voice teacher at West Texas when Renee was there for a couple of years at West Texas before he
Okay.
went to Concordia. So
Wow.
again, it's a small world after
Yeah.
all. I mean, it really is.